Good evening. The City of Bothell Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, January 7th will come to order. Let the record show that all commissioners are present and accounted for except for Commissioner Mike Stahl, who's absent and excused. Are there any non-agenda public comments? Hearing and seeing none, we have no minutes to approve nor new business. We move forward with the continuation of our public hearing on the 2015 Periodic Plan and Code Update. There are two items on our agenda in the public hearing this evening. First is an initial review of the Canyon Park Subarea Plan, and then an initial review of the Downtown Subarea Plan. With regards to the first item, the Canyon Park Subarea Plan, staff has requested, and I'm supportive of us moving that agenda item to 2 weeks from now to January 21st. What's primarily behind that is an interest in getting more data, more research, more background on, particularly on transfer and development rights, TDRs. And I think I'm open to discussion on that. Staff is really not prepared to discuss either Canyon Park or the TDR issue. Is there any? Let me just check, do a head nod. Is there any objection to that? Seeing none, we will move forward to. And by the way, I very much support that. I think that we've researched, we've looked at the TDR issue. I think it potentially offers some real possibilities for the City of Bothell, but I think we need to do a much more thorough analysis of the cost benefits of that. So I support staff's requests for that time. Moving forward, we'll do an initial review of the Downtown Subarea Plan, and just to kind of provide a little framework, each of the 17 sub-area planning areas that the City of Bothell has its own unique characteristics. Downtown is certainly that. And there was quite an extensive process that went through about 5 years ago that involved citizens, business owners, city officials, very inclusive group process that came up with our plan. And what I understand, and Dave will present, mention this in his opening comments, I believe, and that is what we're really doing here in this particular part of our sub-area planning is not a rework of that vision and strategy, but I think we still are very much in wanting to fulfill that, but we've learned along the way, and we think we've known that there will be needing to tweak regulations, tweak particular items that could more clearly fulfill the vision. And so with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Dave. Dave, I guess I would just say we're prepared to go through the plan as specified, and if we want to go page by page, we're more than happy to do that.
So, and I am set up to do that. Excuse me. And I am set up to do that. So thank you, and good evening, and Happy New Year to you all. In the rush to wrap up the last meeting on December 17th, I failed. My last slide included my wishes for happy holidays, so I hope you all had a good one. Chair Booth is exactly right that Downtown Plan is a unique beast in terms of this periodic plan and code update. Unlike other sub-areas, the plan and regulations have all been wrapped up into one package in the Downtown Plan. So I do want to at least touch on the highlights of the comprehensive plan portions of the Downtown Plan for you. They're available online for you to review. Since it's pretty extensive, we didn't feel it was necessary, and we're not proposing making any changes. We didn't feel it was necessary to provide copies of that to you. But let's just take a quick look at the Downtown Plan. The downtown sub-area is approximately 529 acres, as shown in the map here with the red outline. To date, there have been no proposals for rezones or other plan amendments within the sub-area. One earlier request that you may have noticed was included in the January Abandoned Bothell notice has been withdrawn. So, and then there is one that staff is going to highlight for you, but we're not actually suggesting that we tackle that one at this time. There is proposed, as you know from last time, a proposed rezone of the Wayne Golf Course clubhouse area that would, in our recommendation, would extend the downtown sub-area approximately 4.4 acres. But that whole discussion will continue to be, or that request will continue to be addressed in the continuing We Need a Simons Norway Hill sub-area plan process, with the next hearing scheduled for February 25th. And I did want to clarify, there was a typo in my memo that referred to that as coming back to you on February 11th, but it is February 25th. So this is the downtown sub-area plan cover, and as I said, the sub-area plan portion of it is incorporated into actually three parts. The community vision here, which references Appendix A, which includes the existing conditions, and then the city actions. So together those areas cover what's typically covered in the sub-area profile, in the plan, in the goals. It's part of the visions and policies. Also come in the vision section, and then the actions in the city actions section. And then the plan also incorporates the development regulations, and that's going to be the focus of tonight's discussion. So we've, as Chair Booth explained, since this effort, this very community-driven and community-intensive effort was just completed 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago now. We didn't feel it was appropriate this time to go back and revisit that. And when we did the plan was really done on a 25-year time frame. Now, we don't really expect it to be 25 years before we'll revisit some of the visions and the background element. But at this point, I think or at least staff felt that the vision was still valid and still appropriate for this, and that it's appropriate for this document, for the vision, the city actions, and the existing conditions elements to kind of remain a snapshot in time. But I did want to touch on highlights of those pieces. So the community vision, unlike other sub-areas, has its own vision statement. What is a sub-area profile in the other sub-areas is contained in Appendix A, which is also titled Starting Point Existing Conditions, as referenced here in the community vision portion. And the community vision itself includes the envisioned community and for each of the different downtown districts. And it also includes revitalization strategies for the downtown. So that's where the vision is, where the goals come in. The strategies can be thought of as the policies. And then we have the city actions portion. And it includes a summary of strategic actions, the public improvement projects that were foreseen then, and which we're partly through doing. We've done the Crossroads project. We've started the Multi-Way Boulevard, and the Wayne Curve project has been finished. South access to the UW Bothell Cascadia College campus has been completed. So we are making progress on that, but there's still several of those actions yet to be done. And then that city actions also includes short sections on private sector coordination, planning actions and programs, and implementation measures. And those are all ongoing. And then I did want to also include some slides of that Appendix A which includes the existing conditions, the structure of the downtown sub-area, the zoning, the downtown conditions, the zoning, and other existing conditions. The economics is referred to as a separate report, and transportation system is explored in some detail. So that is the vision and the comprehensive plan portion of the downtown plan. So at this point, I could pause. I'll pause and entertain any questions or comments on that. But I am prepared to move forward into a review of the sub-area regulations.
Terrific. Thanks, Dave. Are there any questions of Mr. Boyd? So, seeing none from the panel, a few questions on my behalf. So, some of the key constituents that are in downtown, and by that, I mean, I'm thinking of some of the business owners on Main Street. We're all excited to see the new work going on at McMenamin's, University of Washington, Bothell, Cascadia Community College. Are they being given ample opportunity to provide input to us as their strategy may have changed, or if there's any updating from their standpoint that we need to make sure we're incorporating into our plan?
We haven't done any special outreach around this. We certainly could before the second review. We're not doing and don't contemplate doing a mailing to a 300-foot radius like we've done for the rezone proposals, and we haven't done that for the other sub areas. But we certainly could reach out to the chamber, for example. I did talk with one of the developers who's been active in the downtown developers today about what we're doing, and there may be some participation, at least some review by them of some of the proposals that we're making.
Is there any thought from any of my other members up here? I mean, from my standpoint, I think it's a good idea. If nothing more, that we reach out to them, let them know that the plan is being refreshed, kind of what we are doing, what we aren't doing. That there might be some misinformation that oh my gosh, we're really revising this a whole lot or something like that. It just seems like it might be a good idea for us to proactively reach out if we could do that. I don't know whether it'd be an email or just something on the website, but however we could do that, just to make some contacts there with like you mentioned, the chamber and some of the other key constituents. I certainly think it would be a good idea. Any other comments?
I agree.
Clark?
So we're actually going to be meeting later. The staff's going to be meeting later this week, so I'll bring that up, and I think definitely we can put something on the website, the web page for the periodic plan and code update, highlighting that the downtown sub area is under review at this time, and the packets are already appearing there. So, but we can certainly bring more attention to that, and like I said, contact the chamber and some other key stakeholders.
That sounds great. Thank you. Since we're kind of at a break point, we've been joined by a few other folks, and I just wanted to let them know that this is a public hearing. If any of you would like to speak, this is your opportunity to do so. Feel you're under no obligation to do that. So, seeing that, yes, I think we're going to have one of them come forward and speak.
And speaking of stakeholders, we do have a group from the University of Washington Bothell, which are an important stakeholder here.
Great. So thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. And all that we'd ask you to do is just identify yourself and who you represent, and also just your address for the record.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anna Kerman. I'm a Vice Chancellor for Administration and Planning at the University of Washington, Bothell. And my home address is...
Sure.
Or the work address.
Or just say your work address.
What's our work address?
18115 Campus Way Northeast.
Thank you, Kelly.
Great.
So, and I just wanted to introduce myself and say that we are really looking forward to continuing collaboration with the city. It's a very exciting time at the University of Washington, Bothell. You've probably been aware that we've been recognized recently by many national rankings. I brought you some of our information for your records, which provides some of the rankings. And for example, we identify as the 7th, one of the best colleges to add most value for the money. So, and we're also the 5th of all master's universities and the 6th best bang for the buck. So many exciting things happen at the University of Washington, Bothell. We continue to grow, and we have new leadership, including our new chancellor, Chancellor Ye. So we're really looking forward to greater collaboration and expanding our working relationship with the Planning Commission. And I have my colleague here, who you all know well, and we also have our consultant over there. So
Great.
that.
Well, thank you very, very much. We very much appreciate you coming. And we will take your information for the record. And just on behalf of the Planning Commission, Chancellor Karaman, thank you very much for coming. Kelly, we know you well. Appreciate all the support and input you've given to us on behalf of the university. And do keep what I said in mind in terms of this is an ongoing process. This is not over tonight. And so as you have particular updates or changes that you think staff should know about and that we can integrate into our process, we welcome that.
Thank you very much.
This is Kelly Snyder, University of Washington, Bothell, same address. I'll follow up with Dave in my capacity with the campus. I'm also the chair of the business advocacy with the chamber. Happy to host Dave and the team at one of our upcoming meetings. We meet once a month, and we can invite the local business leaders and so that they can more clearly understand what the proposed changes are coming up. And as far as the campus, we are definitely growing, and we're definitely interested in seeing what other changes are happening within the code and make sure that we comply with all the latest and greatest regulations. So we keep a pretty close eye on them, and with our consultant, Nico, he has a very good idea of when we process all of our permits, what that takes too. So we want to make sure that we're in good working relationship with the city.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you again, and Dave, I think at this point, before we just dive into a page-by-page, maybe give us a little guidance as to what you'd like to do. Now, so I'll just tell you what I believe we've done on the commission here is we have gone through each of the pages provided in our packet and looked at the proposed updates. And so we're prepared to provide you with some input and comments on them if you'd like. Kind of give us maybe at a high level how you'd like this process to move, and hopefully we can get this done in a timely manner.
Okay. In exiting this, the rest of the bullet points on this final slide popped up. So beyond public testimony, there will be, if Planning Commission does want to proceed with any rezones, and I think there's only one that's even on the table. That's important to know now so that we can do the noticing for the next hearing. And then the main thing, though, is any direction on the potential amendments that I've put forward. And so I will go through those amendments. I've got them on a page-by-page review. I've added a little bit of information. Some of the notes indicated that I'd be providing more analysis. I wasn't actually able to do as much of that as I had hoped for this meeting, but again, this is an introductory meeting, and we'll get to that at the next level. So. Let me. Okay. So the downtown sub-area regulations are a whole new, as we've talked before, a whole new mode of dealing with land use regulations for the city. So we've already done a number of amendments, and it's to be expected that with such a comprehensive change in the code and introducing a new type of code that there are going to be some course corrections along the way, and those continue. So that's I think most of these could be considered issues that we've come across in implementing the regulations over the last 5 years, and it seems that with each new project there's some other wrinkle that comes up that gets us scratching our heads or thinking that we could make the code a little clearer or more straightforward or eliminate any inconsistencies in the code. So that's what I'd like to highlight tonight, and so some of those can be referenced here. Also, where we're and I've just included the pages where we are proposing changes, and where there are some previous changes that haven't been fully incorporated into the formatted document here. I'm also noting those. So in the downtown area, we've this plan does not show the recent areas where the downtown transition density limit has been raised or eliminated. It doesn't show, it shows a number of roadway configurations as under construction that now could be shown as complete. The whole inset map in the lower right corner was there to handle the transition from the previous 522 configuration to the current one. Now that that's complete, that could be eliminated, and perhaps we can reformat the page a little bit to make the map a little bigger, or the legend and notes a little bit bigger and more readable as well. So there are a few other changes. The half-acre open space could now be shown. Now that we've identified where that's going to be, it should be could be shown as an extension of that Park and Public Open Space District at Popkini Field. The changes that could be contemplated, and I'll start with the potential rezone. This whole area along the west side of 522 from Ormbreck Street, just north of 180th, south to the Wayne Curve. That's an area that was originally proposed to be in the SR 522 corridor district, and when it got to council, a neighbor of that area who happened to be a former planning commissioner some years ago weighed in and requested that that the council retain the general commercial zoning there, which they did. And it hasn't really been an issue for us. We haven't had a lot of development proposals in that area, but it is slightly awkward to have this downtown sub-area with a combination of form-based code and one citywide designation in that area. And then there was one, just in the last week, we had a request that made that difference somewhat relevant. We got an inquiry from somebody who wanted to set up a stand to sell Seahawks gear at the 76 station on the corner of 522 and 180th, which is an allowed use under the general commercial zoning, but would not be, or at least would be, required to maintain a higher level of design standards if it was done in the SR 522 corridor under the downtown zoning. Now, of course, if they haven't moved ahead with that proposal. If they did, they would be grandfathered in regardless of what we did. But it did highlight one of the issues where there could be a difference. Staff doesn't feel that this is a pressing enough need that we need to address it as part of this periodic plan and code update. But it is something that we wanted to bring to the Commission's attention, and would welcome any input on that.
What are just highlight for us, what are the differences between having it stay general commercial or going to SR 522? Are they cosmetic?
Not entirely. The biggest difference is that general commercial doesn't allow any residential uses. So we don't see that as an area that's going to be a prime target for residential development, but it could happen, and most likely under SR 522 corridor, it could still have auto-oriented commercial uses on the ground level and residential uses above. The height limit under general commercial is 35 feet. Under SR 522, it would be 45 feet and 4 floors. So that's the other major difference. Beyond that, it's just the fact that, and this is another thing that we sometimes catch ourselves. We get inquiries about signs in that district, and we say, well, that's in the downtown sub area, so you need to look at the downtown sign code. But then we remember that it's general commercial, general commercial, so it's governed by the citywide sign code. So there are just some odd anomalies that are more an issue for staff keeping track of that sort of thing.
I think my only thought is as I look at the map, I would say that section is between a quarter and a third of the SR 522 corridor.
It is.
And it's kind of unique that much of the corridor is not zoned SR 522 corridor. So again, I just like to support whatever the vision from 5 years ago was for the corridor, and really press a little bit as to why we really want to have this unique outlier. Those would be my thoughts. I don't. Mr. Stedman.
Dave, do we know what the concern was from the citizen a couple of years ago when he requested it remain at general commercial?
I haven't gone back to review the exact testimony, but my recollection is that it was kind of the classic thing that people don't like change, and he was used to living next to GC zoning and was concerned about what might happen with a change in the zoning, and then I think the possibility of 4-story development that might have impacted his view of the river corridor was also part of that.
Barring any significant reservation that he had that would negatively impact him and his neighbors that were all in effect, I would absolutely agree with Commissioner Booth on this. I mean, that's clearly a third plus or minus of the SR 522 land right there.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Clark.
I have one clarification, and so the SR 522 corridor, that term is a zoning designation. Is that correct? It's
Yes.
not a section of downtown or anything. It's a zoning designation.
That's correct.
And it looks like there's, unless I'm misinterpreting, there's just a couple, like maybe 5 parcels. It looks like that follow that, or are these ones that are part of the special riverfront overlay also SR 522 corridor?
They are. So they just the cross-hatching indicates that riverfront overlay.
Okay, so
and what that does is it applies the some shoreline designation restrictions on height. There, the height does drop down to 35 feet where you can build, and it also requires view corridors to the river.
So, for clarity's sake, the fact that it's got the pink background behind the crosshatching, that's how you can tell that that's part of the SR 522 corridor? Is that
Yes.
okay? I wonder if I've run into this before with different overlays, and it's confusing as to what the underlying zoning is sometimes. Is there a way to clarify it in the legend, possibly?
Well, that's one thing we could probably do in the legend. with a little more room to make some space, add that designation to the special riverfront overlay. One thing, move it up there right under the SR 522 corridor, and explain that it's make it a subheading under the SR 522
Yeah,
corridor.
good idea.
really good idea.
Then, also going back to this general commercial area, what is, if this is not considered at this time, what is the next realistic point in time of comprehensive plan review where it could be? Would it just be any given year when it was decided to be brought up?
What we're proposing, and this came up, I think, I don't know if it was for the first time at the last hearing, was Commissioner Cabe's suggestion that it might be appropriate to take some of these more complicated amendments, particularly the rezone amendments, and essentially table them and move on, finish the periodic plan and code update by our deadline, and then and introduce those items that we're considering tabling in our 2015-2016 docket. And so we will be preparing a docket for council to consider for in the coming months. I think it's scheduled now for March 3rd. And so we'll be including those and any other new applications that we've received or staff proposed issues that need to be raised. And the reason, and one advantage of, even though this periodic plan and code update will be our one comprehensive plan amendment this year, and we won't be able to do any more during the course of this year, we will be able to start, particularly the Planning Commission review of those docketed items once you're done with this work.
Okay.
So they wouldn't be adopted until toward the end of 2016, most likely.
Yeah.
But we could at least get started on that work.
The reason I ask the question is because I tend to agree with the other commissioners that feel like maybe there ought to be a residential element to this section, particularly as the downtown plan as a whole progresses and you get more and more of the build out done. I think it may just be a natural progression. So it would be interesting to see in a year from now if we look at it and say, hey, now's the time, or if it's another year after that or something. So, thank you.
So, and part of the staff recommendation to defer it is that again, it would be another situation where we'd be posting it and doing a mailing, most likely getting significant public comment, and we're really at a point in this update where that could really put a hitch in the works, and so I think a recommendation to move forward on it quickly after, as part of this 2015-2016 docket would be appreciated.
Okay.
Any other comments? Commissioner Cade.
Yeah, just quickly to weigh in, I would agree with the other commissioners. As we're looking at upzoning or adding residential development to our downtown, something that's close and transit-oriented, close to the downtown core, close to Burt Gilman Trail, it seems like it makes some sense and offers some flexibility that just the general commercial doesn't offer currently. So I would be in favor of bringing that back on the 2015 docket.
Okay. I would point out one clarification where the little hand is here. This little piece of GC zoning, and there's the letter D there that designates a split zone situation. That indicates that if whoever the purchaser of this group of parcels, which has been transferred to new ownership by a housing developer, if that developer acquires the portion between that parcel or those parcels and 522, they can extend they have the option of extending the downtown neighborhood zoning all the way to 522. So they can, at least the piece closest to downtown has that flexibility. But I agree that there are probably some other opportunities for infill housing within that GC area. Any other comments on this page?
There are a number of the notes on there, but from my standpoint, I didn't have any other comments or questions. I'm in basic agreement on where you're headed on those, and I see heads nodding up here, so I think we're ready to move forward.
Okay, next we get into the downtown core district requirements. City Council initiated, I think in 2012 actually, potential code amendment to raise the allowed heights in the downtown core and downtown neighborhood districts from 6 floors to 6 floors and 75 feet and 5 floors and 65 feet. So they're not raising the number of floors, but raising the overall height allowed. And that the 76 and 65 foot heights are what was originally proposed in the downtown plan, which was based on a 16-foot ground floor and then 11-foot stories above that. One of the early changes that we made as we were going through the public process on the downtown plan was to change that formula to 15-foot ground floor and 10-foot floors above that, which works for mixed-use housing over retail development. But what we've heard from developers since then, including the architects that are working on our city hall, is that for office development, the 10-foot floor-to-floor is no longer a viable, a workable dimension, particularly for buildings that are trying to do daylighting and get LEED certification for daylighting. They need a higher floor to floor so they can get high windows that let light further into the floor plate. So,
Dave, let me just jump in
Yes.
there. So let me just quickly do the arithmetic on this. So 6 floors, first floor 16 feet. That leaves then 5 additional floors, 60 feet, and that's 12 foot of floor. Is that what we're talking about?
yes, I'm sorry, it was 12 feet and not the
Okay.
not 11. So
I think from my standpoint, I'd love to hear from others as well. If council has initiated a potential code amendment to raise this, I have no objection to that happening. I know you go into this a little bit later in the material, but the definition of height is not the peak of a sloped roof, but it's like the top edge of the top floor, if I'm correct. I don't know if I've described that exactly right, but kind of if you were to view the top floor as a box,
it's
top of the box.
Yeah. Essentially, it's the eave of a sloped roof building or the top of parapet or cornice of a flat roof building.
Got it. So the slope of the roof, if it's flat roof, then it wouldn't. But if there is a sloped roof, that would be over and above this
Right.
76 feet or whatever.
So it's, in a way, it's really regulating the height that you perceive from the street level. It's not as much regulating the height that you see from a distance, where the sloped roof can add some additional height. Six Oaks is a example of that. The peaked roof on the Six Oaks does go above the 65 foot height.
Are there any comments or questions? Commissioner Clark?
I agree with what you said, Commissioner Booth, about the city council initiated. I guess I'll repeat that. Commissioner Booth, I didn't have my mic on, that I do agree with you. That if the city council initiated it, we should, I think, should discuss it. I do have the question, if it was considered in 2012, what was the reason why it wasn't, was it just decided to wait until this update?
About the same time that they initiated that, we also started looking, that was when we initially started looking at transfer of development rights. And so there was some thought that we might include this additional height as a bonus that you could purchase through the transfer of development rights, rather than something that we would just allow outright. So, but as we've gone further into the analysis of the TDRs, the determination has been that that's probably not a viable option for this particular issue. So we were kind of waiting, and really up until the more detailed analysis that we got as part of the land use element, it was still a possibility. So, but now that it doesn't appear to be a possibility, we thought it probably should be considered as part of the periodic plan and code update for the downtown sub-area. This one will need some more analysis, obviously, if the commission is inclined to consider it further.
Mr. Cabe?
Just a quick question, without trying to muddy the issue, would there be any way to break apart office development for residential as far as our height limits? And or do you foresee that the natural order of a pro forma for a developer would lend itself to 10-foot floor-to-floor heights for residential developments? Like, we wouldn't see a big change in building heights that were apartments, but offices might take that extra elevation.
We could allow that a different height for office development. Which could be problematic. It's not terribly common for residential to convert to office or vice versa, but it does happen. And but I suppose if someone built an office with higher ceilings and converted it into residential, they'd have some nice loft-style apartments potentially. I think our recommendation would be to have it just be a single height limit, but that's certainly something we could look at further. And I know when we were discussing it in the initial review of the downtown plan, there was some talk that that more generous floor-to-floor would allow developers, housing developers, the option to do some loft-style apartments that they may not have with the current height limits.
Okay. So I think we've pretty well given you our feedback on that topic. You also have a change down at the bottom about adding business and personal services. Any background on that we need to know?
I think that was this is something that we noticed early on that we almost felt like we could treat as a scrivener's error. Obviously, there are business and personal services uses in the downtown core area currently, and the only thing I can think of for not including them was the desire to have the ground floor, especially in certain key areas, be pedestrian-oriented retail. But we already have that as a fixed requirement in where we feel it's most important. So we think this is just a kind of a common sense change to make.
I don't see any objection, so I don't think there's any pushback from us on that, Dave.
Okay. So the second page of the downtown core district requirements includes some language I forgot to point out on the map. Let me go back. I'm not sure how clear it is, but there is this gray line for parking exceptions that appears on the blocks around Main Street from Bothell Way over to 102nd, and only on those blocks. We've recently started reviewing preliminary proposals for the block west of Bothell Way and north of 522, and found ourselves wondering well, we realized there was a discrepancy between the wording here under the parking exceptions 3B and the mapping. The exception says that that would apply to any development fronting Main Street. Could only take its have parking access from those designated streets, but there are no designated streets on that particular block. So this would just be to clarify that, and that it applies to those the old portion of Main Street. And then the other change is just to reflect that Bothell Way has been decommissioned as a state highway, and even though many of us still refer to it as 527, it's no longer 527.
I don't see any objections from us on that. Let's go ahead and move forward.
So moving to the downtown neighborhood, same issue. The proposal was to go to those higher heights, same number of floors, higher heights in the downtown neighborhood. I should point out that the original proposal was to apply that formula to all of the downtown districts, and the biggest pushback was on the in the downtown transition and general downtown corridor, which abut single-family districts and would have had 43-foot heights. So the result of that was we ratcheted down the heights throughout. But so right now we're saying in those core districts, just downtown core and downtown neighborhood, it's worth considering the higher heights.
Okay.
And again, on the second page of downtown neighborhood requirements, just another change of name for Bothell Way.
It's fine.
And similarly, in 520 SR 522 corridor district, business and personal services are not allowed. Again, I think the thinking is that those are more pedestrian-oriented uses, but we do have business and personal services uses in that district, and we don't really feel the need. One of the tenets of form-based code is that it is less focused on uses and more on form, and so we think there are some areas where the use restrictions are a little more stringent than they need to be. So, for example, the Dream City Auto, the little brick building next to that, is now occupied by a farmer's insurance, a business and personal services use, which was allowed because it was the office space for the car dealership. But it seems appropriate that it should just be allowed outright.
Yep.
And then
forward.
we're going to skip forward. This is the general commercial district, which just refers to the citywide regulations. We've already discussed that one. This is the other thing that this is a fairly simple change because the SR 522 corridor requirements already exist. So just a matter of eliminating that page.
Okay.
Then we get to the use, building use page. I just wanted to note that some of the previous changes that we made as part of the review of the neighborhood center uses are indicated here, but the new changes are a change to the auto-oriented retail to include a phrase that would include restaurants with drive-throughs and those with on-site dining associated with special attractions or facilities outside the central downtown districts. This is related to the Wayne Golf Course clubhouse to make the kind of restaurant that they want to be allowed if we do extend the SR 522 district zoning to that area. But it also would apply to uses like the preservation kitchen if that became SR 522. And we've had interest expressed of from restaurateurs in the site where Dream City Auto used to be. So a use that was associated to the river, for example, there could qualify under that change.
So there may be a few other questions, but the staff is seeing the need to allow sit-down dining outside the central districts, which would include drive-through and on-site.
Right. Currently, basically the way the use tables are on the next page, I'll go to that. It lists restaurants, drive-through only, restaurants takeout order only, restaurants fast food, and restaurants on-site dining. It's really rare to see a restaurant that is takeout only or drive-through only. So
Right.
we've eliminated the drive-through only and just called it auto-oriented and defined auto-oriented in the previous page, and proposing deleting only from the takeout order. So a restaurant that has a takeout window or or that would be considered fast food without a drive-through could still be in the downtown core in the pedestrian oriented area, but the auto oriented sort of restaurant with a drive-through or associated with a kind of a destination use like the golf course would be allowed outside the downtown core.
Any questions or comments on that? Commissioner Clark?
I just have one, again, clarification. So this section that we're in right now is applicable to all of the zones in downtown. I just want to make sure I understand it, because you guys have skipped some pages in here. We talked about the downtown core and the downtown neighborhood districts, and then it skips to page 70 or something.
Yeah.
Are the other zones in this area also represented in the same way as these are, and then it goes on to this more general stuff? Is that how this is organized?
I went back here, so on the screen, I've got back to the district requirements charts. So the way uses are addressed in the downtown plan is in categories. So in the downtown SR 522 corridor district, pedestrian-oriented retail is not allowed. We want to focus that in the downtown core. Neighborhood center retail is really not applicable. That only applies to the neighborhood center. We're proposing adding business and personal services as a permitted use, and auto-oriented retail is already a permitted use, along with corner store retail. So then when you get to the use tables, then you look within those categories. You say, okay, I'm in SR 522 corridor. I can't do, I don't look at the pedestrian-oriented or the neighborhood business center, but any use that's in the business and personal services, auto-oriented or corner store category is allowed.
Okay. So you just pick from, this is like a menu of options, and some apply to certain zones?
Right.
Okay. Is there a table of contents for this section of this plan anywhere?
There isn't. And one thing we're working on is as we incorporate these changes into this format, and get it into something that right now it's just online as a PDF document that's not very searchable, doesn't have links. So we want to get it into a linkable document, and adding a table of contents is well, and certainly having links is one of the things we want to do with that.
Yeah, I think anything that would make it more understandable to the typical citizen would be great.
I agree.
And accessible.
In the lobby of Dawson Building, there is a fully printed copy of the plan that's just on the table for anybody to go in. It would be very expensive for us to get a printed copy for each one of us, and so Dave gave us the pages that he was.
And actually, when it came out, we did provide hard copies to the
To each
plan-
of the-
to the planning
of the then
commission. I don't
planning
know if
commissioners.
Pat still has his, but
Yeah.
but we as we've been amending it, we've been waiting until we kind of have the critical mass of amendments to run another version of the hard copy, and I think at this point it makes sense to wait until we've finished with this round of changes.
Yep.
And then we'll do hard copies and get you copies and have more copies available at Dawson as well.
Any other comments or questions? The only one that I would add, Dave, is that my kind of initial instincts usually are to try to provide as much investor flexibility as we can. I mean, we want to encourage investment in our city. We also want to keep to the vision and make sure that we're fulfilling that vision. And so this change to auto-oriented retail, I mean, as I think about auto-oriented, I'm thinking about a place has a parking lot around it, you're driving to it, you're using the place and you're leaving. But by adding drive-through, I tend to think of a fast food place, which, hey, I'm not against fast food, I like fast food, but I just want to make sure that's part of the vision that we really had for downtown, which is fine if that's what we intended. So I'm trying to weigh both these, so flexibility as well as keeping the vision intact.
Well, the vision does, I don't know if it specifically addresses fast food, but it does say that the place in the downtown sub-area that's appropriate for auto-oriented uses in general, and I think restaurants would be among those, is along the main corridors, the 522 corridor, and to some degree along in the general downtown corridor. So that was the vision, that we don't want to have drive-throughs in downtown. The only way that we would allow a drive-through in the downtown core, downtown neighborhood districts would be as if it was internal to an internal parking lot or parking structure. But
by changing this language, are we changing that?
no, I think we're making it more clear that those kind of uses should be in the SR 522 corridor. What we are changing slightly is we're expanding a little bit the options for restaurant development in the 522 corridor to include a sit-down restaurant that is tied to some destination or special attraction. So if we do eventually make the change from GC to SR 522, Preservation Kitchen would be allowed because it's tied to that historic structure that they're in, and therefore is a reasonable place for a kind of destination restaurant that you probably drive to. Again, if we extend the 522 to the golf course, that would qualify. If someone comes along and wants to build a restaurant, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Agua Verde down on Portage Bay by the University of Washington main campus, that has kayak rentals underneath the restaurant along Sammamish River, that portion of the corridor, that could happen. So,
Okay, I just wanted to make that note. I think we're ready to move forward.
one other change on this page in the lower right under 5C. The downtown plan dealt with home occupations, basically equated home occupation and live work, and which isn't the way most of the world defines live work. And it included this provision that said once established, live work may not be converted to solely commercial use. Well, in the case of of Six Oaks, for example, they saw a limited market for retail and commercial uses on their ground floor, and developed the backsides where they weren't required to do pedestrian-oriented retail with ground floor units. And we said that's okay, that's allowed, but our other parts of the code require in those situations that they be designed and developed in a way that could convert to commercial. So right now, they could be used as live work. It's not required that they have a work component, but they could be. And we don't think it's consistent to say that it can't be converted to solely commercial use. So as I think the vision is that as the downtown retail and business core becomes more successful, then it can expand, and some of those ground floor residential units can be converted.
Commissioner Cabe.
One follow-up question. So if they are converted, are we going to have a lot of small retail spaces? Or I guess when I was originally looking at the downtown plan, I envisioned larger retailers on the ground floor for pedestrian access.
Well, we're actually going to get to that issue a little bit later here, but the plan actually envisions sort of traditional sort of Main Street commercial where you have window door, so a lot of smaller shops. It has exceptions for anchor retail, the bigger retail, and in this case, or particularly in the case of Six Oaks, I don't necessarily see those units converting to necessarily to retail, but maybe business and personal services or office uses that may want to have some pedestrian interaction, but like a tax accountant or that sort of thing. But and then maybe over time, if there is a big surge in brick and mortar retail, there will be a demand for retail in those spaces.
Commissioner Stedman.
Dave, is there a difference in parking requirements for the residential versus commercial?
There is. We don't think that it's for the amount of area that could convert that it's going to be significant. In the case of the Six Oaks, since they built or paid for all of the on-street parking surrounding that building, they were able to use that towards their commercial parking requirement. Their residential parking requirement all has to be on site. Converting those spaces to commercial actually helps their parking situation, where their tightest parking is the residential parking that they had to include in the building.
And my only concern would be if we have that flexibility in there, that we're not creating issues for neighbors around that particular building with parking. So
the parking requirement for commercial is 1 per 400 square feet. So, and it's 1 per bedroom or for residential. So it's fairly close in terms of square footage. Anyway.
okay, thank you.
I think we're ready to move forward.
So on the tables, we already talked about the auto-oriented restaurants. I've noted here in red the changes we previously made. One that we are proposing to add is for health and exercise clubs. We've had a inquiry recently by a Pilates studio that is being displaced and was looking at a potential location in the downtown transition district that used to be zoned R2800 OP. The downtown transition district does allow business and personal services uses, but health and exercise clubs are classified as pedestrian-oriented or neighborhood center, but not business personal services. And it's debatable whether it really fits as if it should be called a business and personal service. I guess in a way it is a personal service, but we thought it was appropriate to allow them where they were allowed in the OP zoning. They are allowed in OP zoning. So, and it would perhaps take a little bit of pressure off of having those kinds of uses on Main Street where they are allowed currently, partly because we had several of them already existing, but they're not as they're not the kind of high pedestrian activity uses that we would really like to see in Main Street. So my first thought when I was asked if this could go in that space was, well, I'd really rather see it there than on Main Street, but currently the zoning doesn't allow it. So this would fix that.
No questions or comments on that.
Okay. So the next issue gets into the height issue. And the first amendment proposed under B, at the end of B there, is just to make it clear that we already allow partially underground garages as long as no more than 5 feet extends above grade, but we've run into some situations. How do we apply that where the entrance is? So this would allow at the facade for the grade to go down to the entry level of the garage explicitly. We've already kind of done that through an interpretation, but we thought it would be good to make that explicit. The next proposed amendment is in E, where the code allows special features, including elevator equipment enclosures, to extend above the height limit by not more than 10 feet. In some of the new buildings that have roof decks that they want accessible by their elevator, the building code requires 13 feet from the floor of the or the roof level to the ceiling of the elevator head house, so that the 10-foot height doesn't work for that situation. So we're proposing increasing that to 15. On the next page, I'll show the workaround that we devised for that. I did put in this note about consideration of some of the challenges that the slope top box that the downtown plans method of establishing the height limit creates. So just quickly, I don't have a full analysis for you on this. I'll have to bring that back next time. But in the citywide code, you draw a rectangle around the footprint of the building, average the heights at the midpoints of each side of that rectangle, and then your height limit is the height from there. So, and if it's a flat-topped box. So you'll have, if the height limit is 35 feet, you might have a 45-foot height high building on the downhill side and a 25-foot high building on the uphill side on a steeply sloped lot. The downtown code, the slope-top box, basically forces that building to step down, which developers don't like because it's harder to. I mean, they like to have consistent floor plates. It restricts where the elevator can go, those sorts of things. So, on the other hand, it does keep the overall height of the building more consistent throughout the sloped site. It actually seems to be a bigger issue on shallow slope sites in a way, because that cutoff line extends further. So it actually was an issue on the earlier versions of the city hall, but when we scaled that down, removed part of that fourth floor, that it was no longer an issue. But it basically turned the city hall, which should allow a 5-story building, they really could only fit 4, and even then it was difficult on part of it. So this is something that needs a little more analysis on our part, but I did want to introduce it.
Okay, understood.
And here's the situation. At the top of this, center of this facade, this is the Boulevard Place project that's going in on the old Safeway site, the Shag housing. So their elevator head house is in the center of that facade at the top. And because the height on sloped roof is measured to the eave, we said, well, if you build a big enough sloped roof on top of that elevator and incorporate the lobby and some storage areas under that roof, then you can get your actual elevator head house within that roof. So it was a little bit of gymnastics that needed to be done, but and we don't want to require everybody to build a hip roof cap on their elevator head houses. So let's see, special height restrictions. This is another one that just came up with the proposal for the Mercantile Building site, where they're proposing to do a partial demolition, save the 3 historic facades on Main, 102nd, and on the south side of the building, and build a 4 to 5 story apartment building behind them, set back from that historic facade. So they were in a situation where they are setting back the tower element from the facade. The upper level setback only applies to its Main Street facade, but they and only a portion of that Main Street facade, the historic portion, is the only part that's going to come out to the street. So what they're proposing is to have an upper level setback. Well, let me take a step back. The code currently requires that upper level setback of 20 feet above the second story, but it allows 50% of the third story to fill that space, to come out to the facade. And again, that's partly to mimic what we have on Main Street, where we have some taller buildings, the Masonic Lodge and the Mills Music Building, in the midst of mostly 1-story and a couple 2-story buildings. What they're proposing is to have that setback go most of the length, but only come out halfway. So what we're proposing is, instead of letting that third floor exception occupy half of the width, to just let it occupy half of the volume. And what that does, one thing that does is it, 20-foot wide terrace is a pretty large terrace as a usable kind of balcony space. 2 10-foot terraces are probably more usable, which is why I think one reason they're doing that. And next time I can bring actual the drawings of their proposal, which I think you'll be interested to see. Any comments?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we're tracking with you in terms of what's driving some of these changes, which is very helpful.
Okay.
I guess I would my only comment would be that on several of these, what sounds like being driven is that there's a developer who has some ideas and wants to work within the plan, and we want to find a way to make that work. And I'm generally supportive of it, but then I think we're taking this next step of somehow modifying language that will just be really just for that specific project. Will it really hold for other projects as well? Are we seeing these, I guess that's my question, are we seeing these language improvements that are going to really carry forward to other projects? Or is this just a one-off? And in that case, do we really want to change our code for that? Does that make sense? You understand? I don't know if anybody else is with me on my question there, but
well, from our perspective, we're bringing these forward where we do see that it isn't just for a specific project, where it's something that's going to apply to others.
Okay, I think that's all I need to hear, and that is that staff's really looking at that this is really what you're proposing are real improvements to the overall vision and the overall plan.
Yeah.
And your answer is yes, so
We
let's
think
move forward.
Here's the one that gets into the size of the retail spaces. And I have to confess that this is one that slipped by us on the Six Oaks project, because it has a 50-foot maximum width for, well, it's length, but it's really the width of the tennis space on the facade. And it only has an exception for anchor retail. And although we define anchor developments as overall developments with 30,000 square feet of retail, that's another area where we've, in terms of interpretation, we've interpreted that as meaning overall 30,000 square feet. It was originally conceived to apply to grocery stores, maybe drug stores as anchor retail, and full-size grocery stores are well over 30,000 square feet. But specialty grocers, the kind that we would really like to attract downtown, are less than that. Drugstores are less than that. So that's one reason we've made that interpretation. But here, in Six Oaks, the Amaro Bistro restaurant is about 65 feet across its boulevard frontage. The BECU is a little over 60 feet. But even if you go to Main Street, Bothell Furniture is 90 feet. The old Parker Paints, the Sherwin-Williams now, is 55, or I think close to 60, actually. Paul Richards is 52. So we just think the 50 feet was too restrictive. So we're proposing, and there is an articulation increment of 25 feet minimum. So it's appropriate that the overall is another increment of that. So we're proposing going to 75 feet, and also adding a definition of anchor retail as anything over 10,000 square feet. So that would apply to Bothell Furniture. They would not be non-conforming. If somebody came in with a large format restaurant, it's not necessarily what we ideally want, but I could see that happening, a 10,000 square foot restaurant on one of these developments. That could happen. But for the most part, the 75 feet, I think, gives us a reasonable amount of flexibility.
Any comment on the change from 50 to 75 feet? Commissioner Stedman?
I support that.
I do
think
too.
that makes sense.
I do as well. Okay. I think you've got support from the commission on that, David.
Okay. The maximum building length, the language here refers to, it says the maximum building length is defined as the total length of a primary building mass fronting a street or open space, as shown in the figure below. So the figure has a sizable notch, but it shows the maximum building length as the overall building length. What we've been confronted with, and it doesn't indicate roof or building height. So, if this portion of the building was a higher volume and then this was a lower volume, our interpretation was that we could consider this to be the maximum building length. And we were faced with that on one of the very first projects that came up in the downtown plan, the 104, and they were struggling with the maximum building length along their 185th frontage that basically would have required them to separate that into two buildings. And they proposed a solution that created these courtyard spaces, and they used it for part of their required public open space, and recessed the facade essentially in two areas. And it's subtle, but those areas that project out what we're calling the primary building masses are slightly higher than the recessed facades. As you can see you can see here in this photograph. So again, that was an interpretation that that we feel would be appropriate to make the graphic here representative of our interpretation. So we would need to come up with some criteria for the size of these and the depth of the recess and that sort of thing, but that way a developer could come in and know exactly what could be done there. We had a similar issue at Six Oaks. This is not a great drawing, but this is the drawing they submitted to say that in this, where they have a recessed facade where they're saving the Six Oaks, which we also had allowed them to use as part of their public open space, that should be considered a separate building length, and that the primary building mass was this piece that comes out to the back of the sidewalk, and when we did allow this as part of that interpretation. So that's what we're trying to do here, is just codify the what we have interpreted.
I see heads nodding. My comment is that I believe on the 104 project, I think that innovation enhanced the search for the right word, but just the I guess I would just say quality or variety from the sidewalk rather than just a flat face as well. So I support it.
Okay, moving on. This is section 1264-300, actually 301, which gets into street regulations. That and specifically the requirements for maximum parcel perimeter. In order to extend the finer grain of the traditional small town grid into the new development area, we established a maximum parcel perimeter size, so you can't build super blocks. And so if you have a block that is over that maximum perimeter, which is typically 1,500 feet, you have to divide that either with a street or with an open space. But it doesn't specify what kind of open space, other than it says that alleys and passages, which is a kind of a narrow linear open space, can't be used. They're included as the block, part of the block area. But then when you get to the open space definition, the minimum width for a passage is 20 feet. The minimum width for an open space is 20 feet. We thought it was necessary to be a little more specific here. So what we're trying to do is say you can have a linear open space and use it to address this maximum parcel perimeter, but it can't just be a straight 20-foot wide swath. It can have a minimum dimension of 20 feet, but it needs to have some intervening spaces that are bigger. So at least 30, with an average of at least 30 feet.
I don't see any comment or question on that. I think my only question is when I see the term open space, I tend to think park, and that's really not what we're talking about here at all, are we?
Well, a park is one kind of open space, but it could also be a plaza. It could be or it does include a passage. There we go. I'm going to skip ahead to the. So here's where this plan handles streets and open spaces in the same section, and it really actually looks at streets as part of the open space network, the connection between the parks and plazas. So anyway, alleys are a minimum 20 feet wide, passages are a minimum 20 feet wide with a minimum 6 foot wide walking space, and then there's a special definition for a pedestrian walkway, which is really just to establish that there needs to be a walkway from the end of the old 527 to the park at Bothell Landing. But So what we're addressing in this code amendment is since it says that something that's just a 20-foot wide swath between buildings shouldn't count as open space per the maximum parcel perimeter, defining what that, what the minimum requirement really is.
Okay.
Then going back to the, interesting. Seem to have done something to disable my keyboard, so we're not going to be able to go backwards, I guess. Which maybe you're just as...
So we were on page 85. Are we going to go to page 86 now?
We're actually skipping to 91. And this is one that we've run into in the design of a project. The requirement for public open spaces proved to be a difficult one to address on some sites, and there is a cash in lieu option, but we found that most developers want to at least try to accommodate it on their parcel. And so it's actually on the Mercantile building that the space that they found available was behind, to the east of the existing historic building. The new building sets back, and that's their public open space is along that Main Street sidewalk. But it's also where the only place that they found was a feasible location for their driveway. And so the driveway bisects it. From a design perspective, it works well because it gives the driveway better sight lines, so you're not just emerging out of a building directly onto the sidewalk. But the language here that's currently in the code doesn't allow that open space of that size to be separated. So we've added some language here to provide some flexibility in those kind of situations. So we're not counting the driveway as part of the open space, but as long as the open space kind of is contiguous across that, it can be divided. And again, I'll bring an illustration of that particular proposal next time around.
Okay.
In the street and open space guidelines, there is a guideline that is also a requirement. So we thought it was appropriate as a requirement, and that doesn't need to show up again in the guidelines.
Yeah, I saw that redundancy.
Yeah. Moving ahead to the lighting, when downtown plan was done, we hadn't updated our citywide lighting, and there was a reference to that future update. So now that that's been done, we're changing the language there to recognize that. And in the uplighting section, there's a provision that says that uplighting, including landscape uplighting, shall be turned off after midnight nightly. And I checked with our capital planners that did the boulevard lighting, uplighting for the trees there. Those are on solenoids, so they're on whenever it's dark. So they're basically on all night. And so I haven't really explored further how difficult it would be to put those on a timer, or if they feel like it actually provides some benefit safety-wise in terms of illuminating the sidewalk, or if they're actually counting on that reflected light. So I'll need to do some more analysis, but that's one provision that we think may need to be tweaked. Moving on, we jump ahead to 1264-403, the general parking requirements. This first one is related to that mercantile building situation. The requirement, the regulations are quite clear. They require you to access parking from alleys if they're available, if they're not from side streets, and if they're not, then only then can you use the front streets. The current mercantile building has a driveway off of 102nd. It's very narrow. There's also an alley that extends behind the Verizon building to the southeast corner of their site. That's also only 16 feet wide. Their traffic analysis turning movements just showed that those were not feasible, and they also, to widen them would require extending onto the King County park and ride lot. King County said they wouldn't even give them an answer for 9 months. So they proposed, or they asked for an interpretation in this case to allow them to have their driveway off of Main Street. And in this case, we're actually treating 102nd as the front. That's the historic facade of that building. So this provision would give the director some flexibility where a developer shows that the other options are just not feasible.
Okay.
And then we're proposing adding a new section at the end of the parking guidelines for bicycle parking. The regulations require secured bicycle parking, either rooms or lockers for new developments, but they don't really address sort of convenience bicycle parking, and we thought that was important. We realized that some of the projects that come forward haven't addressed that very well, and we don't have any code guidance there. So this would provide that.
The only thing I circled on that one was the word should. And is that something we've done before in our regulations of where we're not requiring it, we're just more suggesting it?
Yeah. In guidelines we use should, in requirements we use shall. So.
Okay.
And one reason for leaving it as a guideline is in some cases the street improvements provide that convenience parking, but not in all cases. So there's some situations where some convenience parking, bike parking is warranted.
Okay.
Building length massing, this is one area where I wasn't able to get to the additional analysis that I hoped to. But the regulation and the diagrams explaining it are a little bit confusing. As you can see here, it shows one dimension, the maximum street wall length massing increment that actually goes beyond the center line. And the reason it does it because the center line could be a bay or a notch. So it goes to the far edge of those structures. But when you get onto the next pages, there was another dimension shown on the previous diagram, and then on the next pages it shows the adjacent length increment, which is the overall length of a facade offset, or the length between two piers or between two notches. And what we're proposing is to simplify that also. It's so we don't have, there's no confusion about which of those three is the dimension that's is the maximum length. And we think it's appropriate for it to be this adjacent length increment, because that's the more consistent one to measure on all three types of modulations. So we actually think we can condense this down to just the three diagrams and not.
Yeah, I think that's I'm any questions or no? I think we would agree that that's an improvement.
Okay. And then we're getting close to the end here. The architectural guidelines, or requirements and guidelines. There is a provision that says sloped roof canopies shall not be used in the downtown core and downtown neighborhood districts. I think the genesis of that was to make it not permissible to do the kinds of sloped roof canopies that the shake-covered sloped roof canopies we see on Main Street now. But the Main Street, the historic guidelines already specify what types of canopies are appropriate, historically appropriate canopies. And there are other areas where a sloped roof canopy may be appropriate. The elevator head house is one example. Six Oaks has a sloped roof canopy as part of their entry tower feature. So we just think that's a little bit too restrictive.
Commissioner Vliet.
Hey, Dave. So when you say sloped roof, like what? So does that, I mean, do you have, if it has any slope at all, or
No.
so it has a, okay.
Yeah. So in terms of canopies, I mean, we refer to flat canopies or canopy that has at least a minimum quarter-inch per foot slope, and up to an inch per foot, but basically have a essentially flat appearance.
Thanks.
Another requirement that's proved problematic is this, and a little confusing, is this requirement that says only garage doors for detached single-family houses may face streets within 50 feet of the front property line. And again, in most cases, we don't want the garage entrances on the front, but there may be some situations where they will have to be. So we're proposing eliminating that. And then having the next pair of requirements currently refer to, they say all single-wide garage facades shall be set back a minimum of 6 feet. All double-wide garage facades set back a minimum of 20 feet. That basically implies that where you have the garage entrance, that whole facade needs to be set back, whereas in some cases it may be appropriate for just the door, that level, to be set back and have upper levels overhang that. So we're proposing making that change there. And again, I can bring illustrations of developments that show how this would apply.
So just to make sure I understand, so we're talking about a garage door for a single-family residence, or we're talking about a garage door for a parking garage?
Well, the requirement currently says that only single-family residents can have garage doors closer to 50 feet from the street. So it applies. So if you're building a multifamily building, you have to have your garage door back 50 feet, and that's pretty tough to do
sure is.
In most situations.
But when you take that language out, then what remains is just a specification on garage doors. It really isn't talking about whether it's a single-family home or an apartment building or...
Right.
Okay. Well, I do agree the 50-foot, I don't know exactly what was behind the thinking on having it 50 feet back, but I mean, that just seems prohibitive, especially for the density levels that we are envisioning for downtown.
Yeah. Like I say, it wouldn't...
Storage?
Huh?
That's storage for cars, you know what I mean? So you don't back cars up on the street if there's a...
No, I don't think so. Because for anything but a single family, you're not gonna be backing out of the garage.
I mean for when, so if you're waiting for the garage door to go up or that type of thing, so it's...
Oh, I see.
It's
So
a
you're off the
storage
street.
pocket.
Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah, it could be.
It's still 50
I
feet.
don't
Yeah,
remember what
but
it's for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that may need a little more attention because you're right. 20-foot setback for a double-wide garage on a single-family home might be excessive. So I'll take a closer look at that. But that's the essential
Okay.
issue.
I think we have one page left.
And this is just, again, to make it consistent with the general parking requirements
So that's just a consistency
Correct.
update? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. So this is in the historic resources section of the code. And we talked earlier about making this change in the downtown core section. So this would make that consistent. So that is all that we have. I'd certainly be we're open to any additional changes that the commission might have come across, or any feedback on.
Are there any additional comments or questions? We've given you, I see none, so, we've gone page by page through your proposed changes to the regulations. We provided you with, I think, some pretty good feedback tonight. There are some areas you're going to do some further analysis on and come back to us, but I think you've gotten quite a bit of guidance from us already as to kind of where we're at on a lot of this.
Yes.
So are we going to come back for a second review?
Yeah.
And if so, do you have a date in mind for doing that?
Currently it's scheduled for February 4th, but we're making some changes to the February schedule. That's why it wasn't included in your packet. It will be included in next week's packet, but currently I'm slated to bring back Shelton View and Queensboro on the 11th, and pairing those with downtown would make sense to have all three of my issues on the 11th. So you don't need to officially continue this to a date. We'll provide that in the schedule for next week, but that's my suggestion is to do it, continue it to February 11th, but it could come back on February 4th.
Okay. So we'll look forward to staff's recommendation on which date to continue the downtown sub-area plan review. If you could bring up your slide that you started with that had some proposed language for us to conclude our meeting with as to kind of where how we will continue our public hearing for next week. So it's that second, or that final bullet point that's kind of where we're at. So are we ready for a motion on that? So if someone would propose that motion.
Motion to continue the public hearing on Motion to continue the public hearing on the 2015 periodic plan and code update to January 14th.
Second?
All opposed? None? In favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion passes unanimously. So at this point, we'll move forward in our agenda. We do not have a study session this evening that I'm aware of. Old business. Any other reports from staff, Dave?
Just a brief one. And I did want to mention, it didn't need to be a part of the motion, but next week you will be getting a second review of the Country Village, Lake Pleasant, Bothell Everett Highway sub-area, and initial review of the Fitzgerald 35th Avenue Southeast and Canyon Park Creek 39th Avenue Southeast sub-area plans. Bruce Blackburn will be bringing all three of those items to you, and he's actually thinking that the Fitzgerald and Canyon Creek ones may be ones that can be finished in one session. So,
great, thank you for clarifying that.
And then one other thing on the staff report side, I just wanted to follow up on this idea that we introduced at Commissioner Cabe's suggestion that some of these proposed code amendments, particularly the rezones, you have the option also of deferring them to the, as we discussed with the general commercial to SR 522 corridor district, to the 2015-2016 planning docket. And staff is going to be looking at a number of the amendments that are still pending, and likely coming back to you with some recommendations for some of those that we think would make sense to defer, just either due to their complexity, the amount of neighborhood input that they've generated, or just the fact that they aren't particularly timely, or at least that there's not a big rush to get them done as part of this plan and code update. So just wanted to, again, plant that seed in your thoughts, and we'll be getting back to you in the near future on those.
Did you have any comment on that?
I kind of wanted to see what you guys thought. Seems like some of the rezone items we've looked at have been the entire focus of these sub-areas and takes away from the broader planning spectrum. So not only are we putting our schedule at risk, but I think we're looking at one individual tree as opposed to the whole forest as far as each individual section. So I don't want to tie developers' hands or whoever's proposing the rezone, but in certain situations I think it makes sense to postpone until 2015, 2016.
Any other comments on Commissioner Cabe's point? Mr. Stedman.
Just a quick question. From staff's perspective, how are we doing time-wise? Do we have more work than we do time? Is it close, but we'll be okay? Or from your perspective?
We're concerned that the June 30th deadline is going to be difficult, especially if we carry forward all of the proposed amendments. And we think that some of the proposed amendments maybe aren't so time sensitive that a delay. It is a significant delay. It's approximately an 18-month delay from adoption. But we are, any of the ones that we carry forward wouldn't need to go through the usual process of application and fees. So there still is a significant benefit to the applicants or the requestors of those, and it would prevent the rest of the hearings from being monopolized, as Commissioner Cabe suggested, by these issues.
Has staff thought about contacting those individuals that have requested a rezone and said, hey, is it an issue if we postpone this for the 2015 2016 docket, to see which ones we can easily set aside?
We've started that.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't contacted all of them yet, but
Any other comments? Mr. Clark?
Yeah, I think that unless somebody either volunteers or says, hey, no problem, when we go to them, I think we kind of have an obligation to push as many of these things through to decision as we can. I mean, people spent, I think, a lot of time, obviously a lot of heart and soul in putting these things together, and I think that putting them off what might not seem like, 18 months is a long time to some people in terms of what their plans are for moving forward with some of these projects they have planned as a result of some of these comprehensive plan amendments. So I personally believe that we should do everything we can to push those forward and get them resolved in this current session.
Well, I agree with both points, both that are made with regards to wanting to make sure our work on the plan in general gets done, and that each sub-area gets the attention it needs, and we don't get bogged down by a specific request. I also get the point of we have applicants that have a lot riding on these specific requests. Could we stay very focused on the plan through? I mean, we have this June 30th kind of a deadline for us with regards to finishing the review of the plan, correct?
yes.
And so then after June 30th, I mean, there'd be July. I know we have an August recess, and then, I mean, why would it have to be an 18-month?
The 18-month, the Planning Commission could begin considering these or continue considering these as soon as your work is done on the comprehensive plan update. But state law allows us to make comprehensive plan amendments only once a year. So this year, the periodic plan code update will be our set of comprehensive plan amendments. The next opportunity will be 2016, and we wouldn't have to wait till the end of 2016, but typically, so we'll have a docket docket, a 2015, 2016 docket started this year, and then it could be added to at the beginning of 2016. And it really depends on how complex any new requests are about, whether we're going to be able to finish it before the end of the year or not. But we only have one shot each year to make comprehensive plan amendments.
Well, I understand both points. I think my personal preference is that we need to remain focused on our work on the overall plan. And but I think we can do both. I mean, I think we can just stay crisp and stay on it and try to do both. But if one of them has to give, and I think that's happened in some of our previous meetings, is that we, the work on the plan, the sub area itself, and I don't know if do we have any further work, Dave, on any of the overriding strategic areas for the city in general? Is there any further review that we're going to be doing of those particular elements?
On the topical element?
Yeah.
There's still work to be done on land use and transportation.
Okay.
And then, of course, we have to bring the whole package back for the final review of the...
And that's going to be done, it all needs to be done prior to June 30th.
Well, it needs to be done probably, your review needs to be done probably by March 30th, because it's the June 30th deadline is when we need to get it through council.
Right. So, I mean, city council, their work needs to be done by June 30th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we really need to be done by March 30th.
I think.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm sensing some real urgency to just stay on point with getting through each of these sub areas and getting through any of the other, overall elements of the plan. And I mean, that doesn't mean that we couldn't. Does that mean that after March 30th we could not take up any of these specific requests for?
No, once council reviews the docket and initiates items, then any of those are fair game once you finish the work on the periodic plan and code update.
Commissioner Clark?
What is there a provision for extending this deadline? It seems that's happened in the past. Maybe I may be wrong on that, but
there was some talk that the state might that there were enough jurisdictions struggling to meet the deadline that the state might extend it to the end of the year, but it's looking now like that's not going to happen. It's probably not there's no immediate penalty for not meeting the deadline, and if we were to go, say, a month over to the beginning of the August recess, there could be an appeal that we hadn't met the deadline, but by the time that appeal was heard, if we had, then that would be a moot point. So, but we're really shooting to stick with that deadline and meet that deadline.
it seems like with a lot of these citizen sponsored amendments that we've come a long way on a lot of them. I feel like, and that we're maybe past the tipping point to where we're going to keep moving forward. And I think it is obviously within our control to, at any given point when we feel satisfied that the information is there, we can make a decision. Is that correct?
I believe that. I'm not saying we can't do it, but I am saying that I think we need to have first and foremost the overall review of the plan of what we're setting out to accomplish here, especially by the end of March. But I do agree that there's been, on many of these rezone requests, a lot of work done already, both by staff and by us, and I think in many instances we're pretty close to being ready to make a recommendation on them.
Are you suggesting that that we may wait to consider any more of those and just focus each session, just focus on the, or still have them as part of each individual sub-area?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm open to the thought process here. I mean, when I hear March 30th, and I haven't kept track of how many more sub-areas we have to even do an initial review of, and I know we're doing second reviews of many of them as well. And then hearing that we have land use, and what was the other one that you said in terms of
Transportation.
Transportation. I mean, I'm concerned, and so I just want us to get that work done.
Yeah. Well, and like I say, we're working on, we're reviewing it later this week, and I can't promise that we'll have recommendations for you by next week's meeting, but within the next couple of weeks, we'll be making some recommendations and looking at a number of factors like whether we have the capacity to even do the adequate environmental review of all of the proposed amendments. So those will be factors, as will the possibility of any of those amendments being challenged and holding up the whole periodic plan and code update. So,
Which I don't want to see that happen.
yeah. So,
And so, given that there would be the possibility of us after March 30th of delving into some of these particular requests, then I mean, I'm really for staying on what we're doing with the plan. But let's leave it like this: if either, let's say within either next week's meeting or the 1-2 weeks from now, if staff could come back to us with a timeline. Not what we've had so far is just kind of a calendar that shows us kind of a month or two out,
yeah.
And what we're planning to do each meeting. But really, kind of let's map out between now and March 30th what we really need to do for the periodic plan, and let's get that in place first.
Yeah.
And then if we have time, and we can add some other things on there during that time, I'm open to it. But I think we need to stay with this.
Yeah.
I feel pretty strongly about that.
I believe there's just the two initial reviews, Fitzgerald and Canyon Creek remaining. And Fitzgerald has recently been through pretty intensive review at council. There was even some question about whether we even needed to bring it through this part of the process, but so I think that'll be a pretty cursory review.
Well, and what I remember from a lot of these is that the review of the sub-area plan itself was pretty standard.
Yeah.
I mean, we can move on that pretty quick. It
Yeah.
was, the thing that was taking time were these specific requests,
Yeah.
right? So let's get moving. Let's get the plan done.
Yeah.
Let's and then we're more than willing to take up these more difficult or just more complex requests sooner rather than later. But I think let's just get this plan work completed.
So that'll be coming to you with some staff recommendations in the next couple of weeks.
Great. All right. Any other staff reports?
Nope, that's it.
Reports from members? All right. Then is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Second.
All right. We are adjourned.
Thank you.